everyone, it's Erin with Hail Varsity. I'm joined by Greg, also of Hail Varsity. First and foremost, to get this out of the way, I apologize. It is another very breezy day at Memorial Stadium. There's also a lot of construction. We can even see one of the cranes just over the stadium right now. So they are hard at work on that athletic complex. And obviously, as you see right here, there are chairs getting ready for a concert in just about a week. So it is a busy, busy time at Memorial Stadium. So again, apologies if you're watching this and you're like, it's breezy, it's construction.
Welcome to college campus.
Welcome to the college campus experience. But we have just concluded week one of Huskers fall camp. I mean, it's the first full week, and we just had an opportunity to hear from Coach Scott Frost. We're going to recap that a little bit and also look at just the week that was as we get ready to go forward. Now, a little housekeeping thing, if you're wondering sort of how it's going, because we mentioned this in a previous video, that practices look a little bit different through fall camp because the NCAA passed basically has made it so that they hope to limit serious injuries in fall camp. So there's a restriction on how many full padded practices you can do, how many can be done in shells versus just run-throughs, everything else. But Frost did say that they plan to have a scrimmage in the next couple of days, and that will be a shorter scrimmage, not as intense, and then they will have a fuller, longer scrimmage in probably about a week before they move into Illinois game prep. So housekeeping, get that out of the way. All right, Greg, now that we've heard from Scott Frost, what are you thinking after today?
I think my big takeaway from today and from Scott Frost was just how much that he said the team is a little bit further along than they had been in previous fall camps, and the kind of tweaks that they've made to how they're running fall camp, which basically meant that they're throwing everything at the team to start fall camp and then paring it back versus switching that around as you get closer to game week. And I think that for Nebraska, that's going to produce some interesting results, and where, like he talked about, where you're going to start to have those older guys have some separation from the younger guys just because they've been there, done that, and they've been in the system. Nebraska had a number of guys that returned from last season, and so the results of that I think will make for an interesting fall camp move.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially with the older players. He was talking about that separation and also it allowing the younger players to get a little bit more time with each other and to kind of get more reps. Also, speaking of some of the players, especially younger ones, unfortunately it sounds like Randolph Kapai is going to be out for an extended period of time. He didn't give specifics on what his injury is, but he did say it's unfortunate. They were really excited about what he'd been doing so far. Also, as far as other players that he mentioned, but not because of injury, just because he's excited, he did again bring up Gabe Ervin, Marquise Stepp. Those are two names that came up quite a bit throughout the week. No exception today. So it sounds like he's pretty excited about some of these younger players. I will also offer one thing that I noticed today is he feels like they have 7 or 8 players that could be in the 6-man rotation at wide receiver. So that's fairly good at this point. I mean, we haven't seen a whole lot yet, but I'm assuming he's thinking of guys like Samori Toure, Omar Manning. I know everyone's excited to finally see Omar. But so he did say they're hoping for a rotation of 6 and that they have about 7 to 8 players right now that are really vying for playing time within that group.
Yeah, and I think that the more you continue to hear about, 7, 8 needing to be pared down to 6, the better that is, not just from a depth perspective, but also that means, like you said, all of those guys are actually out there, right?
Yes.
I think that availability at both wide receiver and at running back, like we saw in the spring, I think is a really big deal for the fall and can be a separator as those guys try to vie for positioning.
Yeah, it's going to be, and we said this in our last video, and I appreciated a couple of you commented on this. Like, we have to temper expectations just a little bit, because as we always say, I mean, everything is very exciting in fall camp, and I do want to offer that it is okay to be excited. Excitement is totally fine if you meet it with, a little bit of a more tempered expectation, just because, I mean, this is the time to be excited if you're going to, because once the season starts, then it really gets real. Right. So I appreciate that you all appreciated us saying that, but I do want to just say the next time we'll get to see any part of practice is next Wednesday, but it's very limited. We're not going to see a lot. So until we get to Illinois, we're kind of going off of what we're told.
all bets are off until we see Illinois. There's nothing locked in stone. We were asked this week in the mailbag about a depth chart, and even though Scott Frost did say one of the things that also stood out,
he
feels like he has one, and we were asked about that in the mailbag. We won't know. We, as in you and I, and we as the fans watching this, won't know that until they roll the ball out there for Illinois. That we're not going to know unless something drastically changes and they release the depth chart. We'll all find out together at the same time.
And that does mean even with the backup quarterback situation, obviously Adrian Martinez is QB1. There's no debate there, but who's going to be his backup? It seems like in the limited amount of practice we saw, he was working with Logan Smothers in that second quarterback spot, but that does not mean that Heinrich Harburg is not going to potentially be in that spot. But he also said that could change week to week. I mean, it's hard to know, but they're definitely trying to throw as much as they can at them. That's what they want, to see how they react.
Yeah, and I think I really like that for the young players, because that gives them an opportunity to see everything, as difficult as it can be. And then honestly, in that backup QB situation, it's a little bit of the pressure is off of those guys a little bit, because they're not going to have to be the guy this year, hopefully, and then they can continue to learn behind the scenes and just work on getting better. I think that is a good situation for those guys.
Absolutely. And we will have so much more in the coming days about this. If you're kind of wondering what the next week looks like for practice, as far as at least our availability, because practice happens sometimes where media just isn't available, like we aren't given availability, and that's just how it is.
Monday, I think, is
Monday is an actual off day. So we will be back on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday of next week with more from actual practice. But there's so much to sort of dissect from this week that if you have not bookmarked hailvarsity.com at this point, I don't know what you're doing. You should go ahead and subscribe to Hail Varsity. But we do appreciate you leaving comments, asking questions. It's been great to see kind of where you're at, what you're thinking, no matter where you're watching, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. Greg, any final thoughts before we go get to work?
I'm excited to see where it goes from here after we start to stack more padded practices on top of each other, to really see kind of about the injury situation. And then I think that's where the rubber starts to meet the road with the running back situation as well.
Awesome. Again, we appreciate you as always. Make sure that you're subscribed to this YouTube channel as well if you have not already, and send it to a friend. We'd love to have more people join us in this community. So on behalf of Greg and myself, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.